So did you see the success of the Germany game? Did you see? We haven't talked about this. Did you see the Goodell came out today, or maybe it was late yesterday, and mentioned two sites they're possibly looking at, countries for where they might host the next NFL like abroad games. Have you seen this?
Okay. I didn't see the list. I saw that they were saying it was the most watched
Yes.
international game. I did see that.
Huge. And there was, 80,000 seats, but like 3 point something million ticket requests. So
Well,
the
Mexico
NFL
City's got to be one of them, right? Because
Well,
they've been trying for years.
no.
to do
So
that.
yeah, they are going. Would be two new locations they've never done before. So now they've played in
Okay.
Canada, England, Mexico, and Germany, two new countries. Spain, which
All right.
I was like, okay, I can see Spain a little bit. They like bullfighting. They're a basketball culture. You know what I mean? Like soccer. Like I think rowdy crowds could get really into it. And then France. And it makes sense. I mean, Paris, giant international city. But I started laughing. I think to myself, like, what are the concessions going to look like? Plate du fromage and wine, jambon, ham and cheese. And you get
Those like miniature to like portable wine
Yes.
things. That's what the vendors are going to be walking around with, from Shark Tank or whatever.
I just love the stereotypical I know, like if you watch a Pierre Saint Paris or whatever game, like where like Mbappe plays the big, French soccer leagues. I'm sure it's crazy. They got beers and they're going. But my thought immediately was just like, what are the concessions going to be like for an American, because they kept showing the Germany game, like the beers were like mini pitchers. They were huge. They had handles. These guys walking around with giant pitchers of beer. And I was laughing at myself, like, what is the concessions going to be for the Paris
I just
game?
really hope there's a guy. It's so stereotypical, but I really hope there's a guy that's just walking around baguettes for $2. Of course, dollars. They're talking dollars over there.
Just baguettes and cheese and charcuterie boards and wine.
Yeah. Some maybe like snails on a stick or something like that. Escargot to go.
Yeah, I was thinking like, what would be the two most French-esque teams to send over? And I'm like, I don't even know. Like who would the French appreciate? Like the fine culture. I have no idea.
True. Oh well, I mean the Packers because of the cheese thing, I guess maybe.
Oh, you could.
Right there's the cheese element to it.
I was thinking the New York team because at least I think the French would understand New York.
Yeah.
They'd care enough. I feel like San Francisco is like elitist liberally. Like they could get away with like feeling like a connection to San Francisco, the French, and Paris.
Yeah, I think the antithesis, the teams you don't want there are probably like the Raiders, for instance, or
you don't
some
send
of the harder edged type of teams. Maybe not.
If you want to send them a villain, you send them the Cowboys, America's team.
There you go. Yeah.
It's like Jerry Jones.
Easy to root against.
Yeah, Jerry Jones' his big cowboy hat showing up with 2 6-shooters. Like, welcome to France.
He 100% would do something like that. That would be great. I'm actually okay. I want it to be Cowboys Packers, which just so happened to be a matchup that happened a little recently here that we're going to talk about here. So yeah, let's get to it. Our Week 10 recap episode here on the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan. I haven't said it in a while, but please be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. And, obviously we have the audio version available on all the podcast platforms, but it really helps us out when you guys like the stuff and share it around. So appreciate the support. But yeah, we'll kind of get into this whole thing, Mark. But before we start with the games, I did want to mention this one quick story because it's just too funny to pass up on. The headline, I'll just read the headline because it's perfect. By the way, credit to the New York Post for this headline. They called it "Long Distance: Chain Smoking Grandpa Runs Marathon in 3.5 hours." This has been circulating on social media, but literally this guy in China or from China. I don't know if the race was actually in China.
He's Chinese, and I think it was in China.
It was. At the Xinjiang Marathon. I hope I said that right.
That's a TV news guy right there.
He's 50 years old and he chain smoked the entire time. Unbelievable. He get like the pictures are hilarious. So do yourself a favor.
It's the third time he's done it.
Yes, yeah, it wasn't even. That's right. It wasn't even the first time.
This dude just runs marathons chain smoking.
He's literally sitting there covering his mouth as he's like lighting it up, trying to get the wind resistance down so he can light up his cigarette. It's amazing.
It's like the old John Belushi, Little Debbie's Donuts, Olympics SNL skit.
Yeah.
Only dude. I mean, it's like something out of an SNL skit. The dude chain smoking during a marathon is amazing.
Maybe they should do a game in China because I imagine he's a big Kenny Stabler fan.
He deserves he deserves menthol lights. Just got to go over there and sponsor him.
It is phenomenal. And 3 minutes 28 or 3 hours 28 minutes. Like it's a pretty good time for a marathon. Yeah. So yeah, kudos to this man. All right, let's go to Thursday Night Football. We'll start with that. It was not, two pretty boring teams. Not a great matchup, obviously. 25-15 win for the Panthers over the Falcons. It was rough all around. I think Deontay Foreman has locked up the, lead back for the rest of the year for the Carolina Panthers. PJ Walker, though, has been hurt. It happened in the game, but he didn't leave the game. But he has a high ankle sprain, so it's the Baker Mayfield show once again in Carolina now with Sam Darnold as the backup. But and anything you want to say on this matchup before we move to the Sunday slate?
Only that I think that Atlanta is telling us something. The fact that we haven't seen Ritter yet shows that I think they know Ritter can't really play, because at this point Mariota. I mean, there are times in that game where it's like, okay, Mariota is getting like reckless. It's kind of like the what we've seen with Jacoby Brissett, and we'll talk about him obviously coming up in a second, where it's like you now know it's like these dudes can't play you more than 4 or 5 games. Like they can keep you afloat for 4 or 5 games. And I feel like we're going to get that with Taylor Heineke. Like within the next 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to see moments where you're like, I can't keep watching this. And that Mariota's hit that ceiling of it's like, oh, no. If you had Mariota as your backup to like Mahomes, and Mahomes tweaked a knee and missed 3 weeks, he can get you maybe to 2-1, 1-2, and play pretty well and fun. But now Mariota week 10, it's just like it's getting wild, it's getting weird, and I think Atlanta's telling you something about Ritter. Will we see him? I kind of hope we see him just to see him here the remainder of the year, but I think that's kind of the story to me of this game, because both teams are going nowhere. They're both in rebuilds. But the story to me is like, okay, Ritter's not playing yet, and Mariota's playing that poorly. Yeah, I think that says something about Ritter.
Yeah, and maybe they feel like they've struck the balance of being competitive and not winning so that they could potentially get a high pick. And maybe it's like, I don't want to shake that up at all.
Yeah. The Bears are finding that.
Yeah, absolutely. On the flip side with the Panthers, it's a different situation there too. Like, that's why I think we would have seen Ritter by now. I agree with you, because like for the Panthers, for instance, like even if Matt Corral was healthy, I doubt we would see him, because it's such a crowded room right now. Like you have Baker, you have Sam Darnold. Yes, you know what you have in them, but you're also paying them, and it's just kind of a crowded room. The Falcons, like, it just had made sense for a while. Like if it was this going this poorly, you just move on to Ritter and see what you got. But yeah, maybe they're just not confident enough that he can do enough to turn anything around, and then don't want to shake the boat to hopefully get a quarterback next year. We'll go to the Sunday games, and we'll start with your Bears. Another pretty crushing defeat here. But once again, you weren't expecting much in terms of playoff hopes this year or anything like that. So once again, we're talking about an encouraging defeat for Chicago. And that's mainly the performance of Justin Fields, who, once again, it was a record-setting week again for him, as he has amassed, was it the most rushing yards by any quarterback over a 5-game span in the Super Bowl era. So
he had multiple rushes of over 20. He hit 20 miles per hour, and I think he set some sort of record in that as well. It is tough losing to the Lions, but the Bears are already up to the number 6 overall pick. For example, I saw somewhere it was like the difference between in the 2021 NFL draft between the 6th and the 17th pick, if the Bears had won that game, was Alex Leatherwood at 17 or Jalen Waddle at 6. So like that the Bears need a difference making player like that. They absolutely do on offense and defense. I think the thing that obviously all the encouraging stuff. I could sit here and spend 2 hours raving about Justin Fields and how happy I am that the Bears have finally figured out how to unlock it. I want to make one point quickly, and then I'll go to Justin Fields. I do struggle a little bit with the way they lost this game, in the sense that in the fourth quarter, you'd like to see the offense is so explosive. And now this is the second game in the last 3 games where we've seen them have a chance late and they can't do anything. That is a little worrisome, because it's like, how can you game plan so well when the pressure's not on, when it's just the middle of the second, early in the third, early in the fourth, and your offense can go down and score. And now it's like, oh, no, you need to score. We need 60 yards and a field goal. And they just sack, fumble, turnover, you know what I mean? Like it penalty. So that is a little concerning. That to me is a little bit of the coaching. The Bears' young defense, there's, Seaborn. I mean, there's some really kind of fun little bright spots right now, and they're just not talented enough to actually stop people. But I do think there's a lot of mental errors, and I put a little onus on the coaching. It's like, hey, some of these penalties are really killer. Like, you got to lock that up with some of your young players. So that's a little discouraging. Again, overall feel good about it, though, because the Bears right now are moving up the draft board, and Justin Fields is playing overall extremely, extremely well. The last thing I'll say on Fields is, this is my defense of him. I find myself having to do this over the last couple of weeks. A lot of people saying, well, it's not sustainable, and you're just going to get injured. He's running the ball. Justin Fields
said the same thing about Lamar, and he's doing
the biggest hits that Justin Fields has taken so far this year are when he's in the pocket, because that offensive line is garbage. And without Tevin Jenkins yesterday on Sunday, even more garbage. So Justin Fields can get injured running the ball. Absolutely. Any football player can get injured on any play. So you know what I mean? And I do think if you're asking Justin Fields to just sit back behind that offensive line and hold the ball for 5 seconds and make plays in the passing game, he's going to take shots to the legs and knees and help, because that offensive line can't hold up. So I'm comfortable with what they're doing now. I trust Justin Fields running the football. He knows his body. He slides really, really well, and he's outrunning guys. He's not taking giant shots in that way. And right now, I think it's slowing the game down enough for him to opening things up. So I love the way they're going. I don't love how sloppy it gets, and I don't love that at the end, when you need to go down and win that game, your offense implodes. So those are some criticisms. Defensively, I'm not even going to waste my time criticizing the defense. They have no players. I mean, the back end is really solid. It's young, and it's going to improve. But corners can't cover in this league without a pass rush. And the Bears have 0 pass rush right now, and their linebacking core is either really old or extremely inexperienced. So right now, it's not even worth getting into it defensively.
Yeah, the front seven obviously needs an upgrade.
Yeah. And Dan Campbell's first road win, so shout out to him.
Seriously, yeah, no, it was a good win for the Lions, certainly.
Yeah.
Not to take anything away from them in this one. Also, it was the Cole Kmet show, kind of a coming out party for him a little bit, and I like that. I honestly think he can be a really, really good tight end in this league, and a good number 1 tight end. I think they should try and focus on drafting a good number 2 tight end. I think he's the guy that they can build around personally.
Well, they need a flex guy. It's a different position. Cole Kmet is your Kittle prototype, right?
Sure.
He's not as good as Kittle, but you want, if you can find
he doesn't stretch the field.
You want to find a Kelsey type prototype or a Pitts type prototype, a big wide receiver tight end. I'm comfortable with that. But you're right. He's stepping up in a way to where I'm like, tight end no longer feels like a top 3 priority. It feels like if you can find someone to add, great, but it's not necessarily priority.
And that touchdown on the RPO, that was a perfect explanation or display of Justin Fields commanding the defense to pull in, because he was, if he did that play in week 2 or 3, I'm not so sure they're as concerned with Fields in that scenario, but that made the play, was them pulling off of him. So I didn't even mention it was a 31-30 win for the Lions late. But not to give too much credit on Fields, I thought the biggest play of the game unfortunately, was that pick six. And it was a really bad throw. And,
It was.
those are things that young quarterbacks are going to make. He's trying to make a play, but obviously they win the game in retrospect, if they just end up punting on that series or he
Well,
takes
he
the
did.
sack.
I give him credit with it. They get the ball back in 3 plays later. He breaks that big yard run for touchdown. So he made up for it, and then they missed the extra point. And you're right. I don't. To me, I've already moved on from stuff like that in just a sense that, like, okay, young quarterback's gonna make mistakes, absolutely gonna make mistakes. But he is not the reason they're losing games right now. I mean, the Bears, Chicago Bears, listen to the sentence, scored 30 points at home against the Lions, and they lost. Like, that's I can't be mad at Justin Fields for that.
Certainly. Yeah, no, they did their part overall. That's for sure. Steelers at home over the Saints, coming off of their bye week, get a 20-10 win. It was a weird game. It was tied at 10 at the break. Gave up a late, 2-minute drill to Andy Dalton and company at the end of the first half. But Steelers held New Orleans scoreless in the second half. Kenny Pickett, again, just like he can't throw touchdown passes. He's scored 3 times on the ground, but once again, they put up 20 points here. No points through the air, but George Pickens, I think we're going to see kind of a huge breakout second half for him now that Chase Claypool's out of the picture. They clearly were trying to get him involved as much as possible. I think the Saints at this point for them,
disaster.
I don't know what you do. I mean, you're really in a spot where it's not like, are you going to put Jameis in to save the season? The season's already lost. It's over. So I don't know what they're going to do.
They don't have a first round pick. Like losing games doesn't help either.
Exactly. So they're in a very weird position overall. It looks like they're going to stick with Andy Dalton, however, at that spot. The Steelers, Pickett looked like he, had moments of improvement again and moments where it was just, frustrating at times, missing some guys who are open. That's just going to happen. So honestly, not much to say on this game other than you win out of the bye week. That's kind of what you're expected to do. So the Steelers get to 3-6, and now they get Cincinnati at home this upcoming week. So that's going to be a tough test. But
the Steelers are a different team when they have Watt. It's crazy. I heard a stat somewhere that it's like they are 1-8-1 over their last 10 games when he's missed. Like
when he is not playing, they haven't won. They haven't won a game without him.
0-8, or whatever.
So that might have been without him playing the whole game because he was out for a half, or something like that.
I mean, it is crazy. Like, he is such a difference maker, and it's so great to see him back. And we'll see what Pittsburgh can put together. I mean, a lot of it is based on Kenny Pickett, and having T.J. Watt back gives your team the completeness. It's only fair to judge Pickett when he's got his full complement of defense, offense, what he has here now. The growing relationship with Pickens is a positive. So that's the storyline for them. The Saints are rudderless. I don't know what they're going to do. And at this point, sticking with Dalton, I think it's just them saying, we know Jameis is not the answer, and we don't know what the future is going to be here in New Orleans for anyone.
Yeah, you were actually correct. I stand corrected there because the Steelers beat the Bucs a few weeks ago, and that was without Watt. So it is 1-8-1 overall. Speaking of the Bucs, they were at home, eke out a 21-16 victory over the Seahawks in Germany, in Munich. Honestly, I think that was really cool too, for Tom Brady to be on display in an international game in this kind of environment. I mean, it was for a guy who's seen it all. That was one thing that Tom had never gotten to experience. So I think that was pretty neat for him to go to Munich and perform there. They were singing "Sweet Caroline" and stuff like that. At
Country
the end of the
roads,
game.
take me home.
Yeah. They were doing the whole thing, and so that was pretty neat. Geno Smith, still played pretty well. So the Seahawks are staying competitive. I mean, they're 6-4 after this loss. The Bucs, once again, a win they needed. They got to 500 now, and so they're still top of the division. They're going to be fine. They're going to win this division easily. But it was encouraging to see some signs. This whole thing, though, with their lack of a running game for most of the year, it looks like Rachaad White's going to get a legitimate role here now because it just hasn't been working with Fournette. And White goes over 100 in this game. I think that's going to actually be a huge benefit to the Bucs here. Not only are they getting more healthy, they're starting to find a run game, and that's Tom Brady's best friend.
That was my main point on this game. I was watching the game on Sunday morning, and I just kept saying to myself, I was like, oh my God, this Bucks team, if they can start running the football like this consistently, they will once again become dangerous. I don't know if it's Super Bowl dangerous, but they will get control of their division, and they could certainly win playoff games with that type of offense. They need to be able to run the ball. There's still a chance. I think what's his name, the center, comes back. I think the Bucks, Julio Jones is citing, the touchdown that was nice. And Seattle, it was one of those moments.
Ryan Jensen, I honestly haven't heard anything, so he might come back.
I thought there was talk when he originally got injured that it was Ryan Jensen. There was a chance that he could return by the end of the season.
You might be right. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
But no, it was the first time in a while I felt like, oh, the Seahawks just aren't as good. Like there's a better team than the Seahawks, and the Seahawks have just kind of blown some people up the last couple of weeks that we start to feel like, well, maybe the Seahawks are really good. I still think the Seahawks, would it shock me at this point if they win their division or make the playoffs? Absolutely not. They're playing really good football. I just think that the Bucks are starting to kind of figure it out, put it together, and that's exactly what the kind of win they needed.
Yeah, they can win ugly, and that's, you got to be able to win in a lot of different ways. I'm seeing a report from October 19th that was saying that they hope to get Ryan Jensen back from the knee injury in November sometime. So maybe in a couple weeks we'll see an update there. That would be a huge boost to this team, who obviously has needed all the help it can get along that offensive front. That would be a big addition. The Vikings go on the road. The Bills, probably the most exciting game of the week.
Crazy.
This one ends in overtime. The witching hour, indeed.
Wild.
I've never seen a football game end this way. The Vikings win 33-30 because late, what was it, at the end of the fourth quarter, Bills were going to win, and then Josh Allen fumbles the ball on the snap, backed up in his own end zone. Eric Kendricks falls on it to score a touchdown. I mean, it was going to be game over. There were seconds left. Sends it into overtime, and then they get the winner there on a field goal in OT. But just a crazy way to cap things off. Wild. I never saw a game that could have been won kind of end in that way. So that was pretty.
Listen, both quarterbacks struggled throughout this game, and Kirk Cousins had the chance, with a QB sneak. He didn't get in. Listen, I just got to be honest. You should not call a QB sneak with Kirk Cousins, especially when you have Dalvin Cook. Like, he does not have the strength, the size, the lower body strength to be effective on the goal line in a QB sneak. He just doesn't. So I didn't like the play call.
Or the agility to pick a different hole.
Josh Allen in the center, that's just one of those tight spots. The ball's on the half-yard line, and they never got a clean exchange. It's hard for me to put into perspective, but I do think this is kind of what we've seen from the Bills the last 3 years, right? The Bills, young Josh Allen, is in his fifth year, and it's first year wild, second year playoffs, and then the last 3 years he's been in that MVP talk. He's been in that most explosive player, best quarterback, and rightfully so. But we saw it last year. We're seeing it again this year, where he just hits these points in the season where mechanics get a little off the rails. He gets a little beat up because he runs. He takes big hits. He's such a big physical guy, and all of a sudden, it's a weird 2-game losing streak for the Bills, and they're no longer even in first place in the AFC East, and that is a crazy thing to say. I still think the Bills overall will be fine. I trust Josh Allen, but to me, it once again reiterates the appreciation we should have for teams like the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, because, and we'll get to that here coming up, but it's just everyone, even Josh Allen, has these peaks and valleys still. The only guy doesn't seem to have it in the NFL right now is Patrick Mahomes. And it was weird to watch Josh Allen play that erratically, that poorly. Maybe it's a little bit of the Brian Daboll effect. I don't know. The teams, it's midway through the season. There's more film on the Bills, what they like to do, tendencies. Also, Justin Jefferson is a freak. Kirk Cousins is so smart. Kirk Cousins is so smart. He just feeds him. And I don't blame him at all. I mean, it is like Madden for like a fifth grader. You have that guy is really good. Just throw it to him every single time. And the Vikings should do that. The Vikings, are they legit? It's a great win. It's a great win. I still feel shaky about the Vikings.
They're 8-1, and we both feel the same way. It's just we haven't seen it. We've seen great Vikings teams with this Kirk Cousins at the helm, and they just haven't been able to get over the hump. But yes, it's a huge win. You got to be able to beat some of the best to actually have confidence that you can get some wins in the postseason. But it's one of those things where we'll believe it when we see it come postseason. The Titans at home, 17-10 win over the Denver Broncos. Same old story in Denver, it feels like. And the Titans, despite being 6-3 and the favorites to win the AFC South, still very unconvincing group overall. They feel very one-dimensional. They are winning games. They're finding a way to get it done. But I'm still not like there's just nothing inspiring about this group. It's like it's Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill doesn't scare you, and they barely beat the Broncos that have just looked horrendous this season. So that's kind of sums up this matchup. I don't know if you had anything else to add on this one.
9 straight punts to start the game. These two teams offensively struggle, but the Vikings are the Titans are a better coached football team. That's why they won. The Broncos' only touchdown came on a busted coverage. And even on that deep ball in a busted coverage, it didn't look like a stereotypical Russ deep ball. I was watching the Bears Lions with a buddy of mine who's a Lions fan. And I remember us talking at one point in time, seeing the highlights of this game. And I remember talking, I was like, I really I kind of love what's happening in Denver. Like it's a chaotic mess. And similarly to a Saints team, but almost even worse. I mean, they have nothing. The cupboard is bare. I mean, they gave up the moon and the stars to go get Russell Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett, and it is just weird. It's not working. It's a disaster. I don't remember anything like this in my lifetime where what we universally consider a guy in the prime of his career, a top 8 quarterback in the NFL, getting traded and going to a team and it being an utter disaster. So it's fascinating to watch. And for the Titans, listen, this is Mike Vrabel. I mean, they're really well coached. They play really, really hard. I think their defense is a little better than we give them credit for. Feed Derrick Henry, and they've got it. If they want to take it a step forward next year, they're the team that's got to be aggressive in going to get a veteran quarterback. If there's an unhappy veteran quarterback that is available, they just got to go do it, because until they will lose in the first or second round of the playoffs every year with this team. They are just like the Chiefs with Alex Smith a couple of years ago. They're just a really good team. They have no chance of winning anything as far as Super Bowls go because they're just not dynamic enough offensively. It starts with the quarterback position, but they're going to win a bunch of games because they're really well coached and they have an identity, and that's great for the regular season. It's not great for explosiveness in the playoffs. It's the one thing that scares me a little bit with my Vikings hate is that the Vikings, they are a really great regular season team, but they do have the explosive element because Justin Jefferson is that good. He's that good.
We'll see how the Titans feel about Malik Willis, but he's a guy that, was insanely raw. He may need another year or two.
Yeah.
He has looked more time. Really, but Derek Carr might be a good candidate, which we'll talk about.
Maybe, yeah.
The Chiefs 27-17 win at home over the Jaguars. Mahomes throws 4 touchdown passes in this one. So very encouraging stuff that continues to come out of Kansas City there. Doesn't matter if it's the Jaguars or anyone to get a double-digit win. Any way you slice it, that's a good thing. 7-2 now for the Chiefs. I'm still on the Trevor Lawrence's great train. I've seen too many great throws from him. It's just about the team around him. And how about this, Mark? I haven't watched enough overall film on the guy to be able to make a actual determination. But the number one overall pick in the draft, Trayvon Walker, I have heard nothing about.
Yeah.
We have heard nothing. We've heard Aiden Hutchinson on the losing Lions. We've seen those highlights and stuff. I haven't seen anything from Trayvon Walker so far this year. Maybe that's just because of the market they're in, but I have
Two
a
and a half.
feeling that it's not that impressive.
No, 2.5 sacks on the year, only 18 solo tackles. He does have an interception, but we were funny. My buddy and I were talking about that because he's a Lions fan, and he was talking about Hutchinson being like, okay, like he's good, like he's played well, but with the number 2 overall pick, you're hoping for like, holy crap, this guy's
Chase Young level type.
Well, and he was talking about Sauce Gardner and like we gave people we missed out on, and I said, well, at least you have going for you that Trayvon Walker has been non-existent. So I'm really funny that you bring that up. I'd say this. I thought, again, I agree with you on Lawrence. Lawrence has a lot of Herbert qualities where there are times I'm like, dude, take a hair off that ball. Like, why are you?
He rockets it, man.
What are you doing? And it's like, and they almost look a little too big at times. Is that weird? But like, it almost seems like they're mobile, they're fast, but when you go from watching like Lamar and the elusiveness of like a Justin Fields, then you go watch those guys. It's like they're big and they could take hits, but it's just different. It just looks a little odd at times. But I agree. I Trevor Lawrence was failed by his play calling. I mean, again, they're down big, so you got to throw it. But listen, Travis Etienne only had 11 carries. He had the second most carries. Lawrence with 4. I mean, you only rushed the ball 16 times. You asked Trevor Lawrence to have 40 times against Patrick Mahomes. It's not fair on the road. But again, Mahomes 331 yards, 4 touchdowns. Tooney is now a part of their offense, and he's scary. That sucks for the rest of the NFL. Listen, Patrick Mahomes. It needs to be said over and over. I mean, if you look at the stats right now, he's leading the league in passing yards by over 100 yards. Next closest is Brady. He's leading the league in touchdown passes by 5. The next closest is Allen. He's got 25. Allen's got 20. He's only got 7 interceptions on the year. I mean, he's the best player in football. He is the best quarterback in the NFL. Allen is in the discussion on days. There are days where Allen and stretches that Allen's in the discussion. And I would still put them in a kind of a tier separated, but I mean, Patrick Mahomes is that dude. He really is that dude. And the Chiefs ran the ball pretty well, and their defense coming around. I think all systems look good for the Chiefs right now.
Agreed. And I'm going to be petty real quick. I recall a message on one of our YouTube shows pre-season when we did our quarterback rankings, and someone commented saying, was just about to subscribe, but then I saw you guys put Patrick Mahomes as the best quarterback ahead of Josh Allen, as if that was like an egregious thing, which probably a troll, whatever. But like, it's very true. Like, Mahomes is 100% the best quarterback in the league. And it's amazing how, confirmation bias of like a few games or most recent
he's the MVP right now, too.
Yeah, I mean, he's unbelievable.
And he should win it. And it's one of those things, again, you can't, you sometimes like LeBron James should have won more MVPs, but storylines get in the way and people have like, a unique season and they steal awards away from guys. It's like, it's why the valuable part of the award is such a weird thing. Patrick Mahomes, every single year right now, he is in the prime, and it's his league as a quarterback, and him and Andy Reid. And again, it goes to show you too, it's a little bit like the Buffalo thing. Buffalo has these little kind of waves of inconsistency. You just don't see that with the Chiefs in that way. Even when they lose, and they're 7-2 in their losses, it doesn't look the way that other teams lose. It's hard to explain, but Chiefs are in the driver's seat. Looks great for them right now.
The Browns on the road to the Dolphins. Speaking of the first place Miami Dolphins in the AFC East, their 39-17 win over Cleveland. An absolute drubbing. I mean, Miami went and got Jeff Wilson, in just like a simple package deal with the 49ers, and he looked fantastic. They find ways to get guys open in this system. Tua Tagovailoa continues to be way better of a passer and way better of just an overall quarterback than I certainly anticipated coming into the year. I think
Yeah.
Mike McDaniel has unlocked all of the potential out of this offense. They are just on an absolute roll, clearly on their way to the playoffs, hosting a game, all of that stuff. But they're seeming to put all of it together at the right time. I think their run game is working in sync now with their passing game, and that's just dangerous. I mean, they might be top 3 scariest offenses in the NFL. If not, number 2, I still more scared of Kansas City. But second to that, I might be most scared of Miami because of what they could do it all.
They really can.
That's pretty terrifying.
Wilson Jr. was a great pickup for them. It helps them really with a consistent running game. Listen, the Miami deserves a ton of credit for doing exactly what they needed to do. What do we always say? You got to give your quarterback, you got to find what your quarterback is, and then can you support him and build a team around him? They built a perfect team around him. Tua at his peak is Drew Brees. And what is Drew Brees? Well, Drew Brees is one of the greatest quarterbacks to play the game in the sense that now, can Tua do it the longevity that Drew? I doubt it. No, I mean, it's extremely hard to do. But at his peak, when Drew Brees was, won a Super Bowl and throwing for 5,000 yards a season, he never won MVP, and he was never considered the best quarterback in the league. It was always Manning or Brady or Rodgers. And so Tua's filling that void now. He's showing that void can be filled. Is that here's the guy who is going to put up a bunch of numbers in an incredible system with a great offensive coach with a ton of weapons around him and does what he does really, really, really well. And they accentuate it. They built an offense to accentuate what he does really, really, really well. Just like the Ravens do with Lamar Jackson. It's like the Bears are starting to do with Justin Fields. So it's really exciting to see if you're a Dolphins fan. Listen, the Saints won a Super Bowl with Drew Brees and playing football that way. The Dolphins, I think, are getting close to proving that it could happen again in that way. The problem that I feel like the Dolphins are going to face is the Dolphins just have, like the Vikings, a little bit of history against them in the sense that they just don't feel at all like an organization that I have faith in January if they're in Buffalo or they're in Kansas City. Are you really going to ever trust them to win that game? You know what I mean? I just right now my gut says no. And that to me is the only thing holding the Dolphins back. Because right now, like the Eagles, they are absolutely just, and the Vikings, they're just crushing the regular season. First time the Dolphins have been 7-3 or 7. Yeah, their record 7-3 since 2001. I mean, think about how long ago that was. I mean, Tom Brady was a rookie the last time the Dolphins had a record this good this late in the season. That proves my point of just like historically, this is weird. So forgive me if I'm not jumping on the bandwagon. I'll give them credit. I think they built a team the right way. And does it have the longevity? That's now what we got to wait and see.
Well, I mean, Tua's got to maintain his health and all of that. But I think this team has kind of proven to be able to withstand a lot of issues. Just like they can run the ball and just run it all day and control the time of possession, but they can score in 2 seconds with Tyreek Hill. Yeah, I mean, I understand the concerns. And it's kind of the similar thing with the Vikings. Like they haven't proven it yet that they can really get those big wins in the weighty moments consistently.
They're a more finesse version of the Niners. Like and again, it makes sense. McDaniel is a Shanahan guy, but the Niners are like, we have a fullback and we have physical wide receivers, and we're going to beat the shit out of you. The Dolphins are like, we have the same creativity, only we're way faster than you. And our quarterback is really inaccurate. So like, it's just this kind of like funny little East Coast, West Coast, NFC, AFC similar vibes, just different at their of the way their point of attack, physicality versus speed.
For sure. Real quick, the Giants win 24-16 at
Great
home
win.
over the Texans. 35 carries for Saquon Barkley in this one. Also, Kenny Golladay had a wide open drop. How about that?
He's terrible. They did what the Bengals did last week, and they're like, fuck it, give it Joe Mixon. They were like, screw it, just give it to Barkley. Let's get out of town.
Works out.
Let's just get out of town and win it. The Giants are going to make the playoffs. They have 7 wins. They will get to 10 wins probably. The Giants are in the playoffs. What I had this conversation with my buddy at the bar. You start saying to yourself, like, the Giants right now, I think, have to seriously consider bringing back Daniel Jones. Like, at this point, depending on how this season ends, what are their options going to be? They're not going to have a high enough pick. They're getting the most out of him. If you can sign him to a deal that's just like a short-term kind of stopgap deal, it's weird to say, but the Giants are they're a fun team to watch because they just throw it all out there, and a huge win for them as the Texans do what they need to do and they march towards the #1 overall pick.
They sure do. Well, after Bill Cowher absolutely lambasted the Indianapolis Colts, it was like, all right, let's pump the brakes there, coach. Like, literally saying the hiring of Jeff Saturday was the biggest disgrace and all of that. I'm like, all right, it wasn't that egregious. It was a little crazy.
Yeah.
We agreed. But anyway, I mean, the guy got a win. Also started Matt Ryan, which was probably the right choice to put Matt Ryan back in the game. He's healthy again. Gave him a couple of weeks to kind of decompress. And they win 25-20 over the Raiders. So obviously a lot of people are looking to Indianapolis on this one. My focus was just how bad the Raiders have been. Like, we look at this team, what it was for the beginning portions of last season. You're like, wow, they just went through all that turmoil and all of that. Finished strong with Rick Bisaccia. And it was like, okay, like, this team rallied. Then they get Devontae Adams. They get Josh McDaniels. The offense hasn't been nearly as bad as like the Broncos with Hackett. So that explains Mark Davis talking about how much he loves Josh McDaniels and how the leash is very long. But they're 2-7, Mark, and they've got a good quarterback, top 12 in the league. They've got one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver. They have pieces. The defense is terrible. Is this, I mean, in your mind, is this just all the years of missing first round picks that have caught up to this team? Or is it because they're still worse than they were at the end of the last year? And that's kind of weird, but I don't know.
Well, besides,
I don't have a takeaway. I'll just say that much. Like, it's really hard for me to figure out what the problem is.
I mean, listen, I admit I was really wrong in the Raiders. I thought they were going to be like, one of the best 4th place teams ever in a division. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I feel the only thing that makes sense to me is, well, first off, Mark Davis cannot afford to pay another head coach to not coach for his team. Like, he can't do it.
You can only take so many hits.
He is a poor man, and and he can't do it. So I don't worry about McDaniels getting fired. I will say they obviously, I think, need to reset. Like, I think if they could get picks for Derek Carr this offseason, you trade him to a quarterback needy team that's willing to give you maybe a first rounder for Derek Carr and a player, or a 1st and a 5th or something like that. You know what I mean? Like a Colts, a Titans, a Commander, someone who you just sell them on Derek Carr. You can get
Carolina, maybe. I mean,
Carolina, like, you need to do Atlanta. I mean, there's going to be teams out there who need quarterbacks. So I think they need to retool, and they need to build this thing back up. If not, keep Derek Carr, but move whatever else you have to do. Because it's just not, they need, the cupboards are very bare. They need a lot of talent. I will say Waller hasn't been playing, and he is a huge difference maker. They're doubling up Adams. There's no Hunter Renfrow. Like, it's easy to just say, oh, they have Devontae Adams, they have Derek Carr. Why do they suck? It's like, well, okay, like, their offensive line is not good. Their other weapons are out, and their defense is completely gutted. I mean, it's like, it's no names. It's a lot.
The worst in the league.
Yeah. So, maybe we should have seen this coming, that they'd fall apart, but I think we all kind of figured they'd build off that momentum and they'd at least just score so many points with a healthy Waller, a healthy Renfro, a healthy Adams. And two of those three guys are not there. And so I think it's a disaster. For the Colts, they're not out of it. Like, and they feel now like the Raiders of last year. They just got the guy who's going to come in there, the rah-rah guy who's going to fire them up. And we'll see what Jeff.
Yeah.
We'll see with Jeff Saturday. Like, they are not out of it, the Colts, by any means.
For sure. 100% not. Green Bay's offense decided to show up in a 31-28 win over the Dallas Cowboys and the former head coach, Mike McCarthy. He was pretty pissed at this game. Obviously, he went for it on fourth down late in this game. Right choice, I think. A lot of people agree.
Bad play, right choice.
Yeah. But Aaron Rodgers throws 3 touchdowns. I mean, give him credit. Like, he made some nice plays. Christian Watson had a career day, the rookie did, after having some injuries and things like that earlier this year. So, yeah, I mean, look, the Packers flashed, but I still don't think that they are enough of a consistent team right now to take one game and say, oh, they're back, baby. They're going to need to do this for a couple more weeks before we start to say, okay, it's Aaron Rodgers and company again, because, they still struggle too often and too spotty performances from them. Meanwhile, the Cowboys are 6-3. I mean, they're in okay standings, but, like we talked about, the NFC East is a juggernaut right now. Not what we expected. They need to be winning games way more than they have been in recent memory. I'm not sold on these guys. Tony Pollard again goes for 115, and he'll be on the bench, next week when Zeke comes back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Madness.
I agree, 100% agree with the Packers take. That was the best version of the Packers offense we've seen since they beat up on the Bears, where they just ran the ball down their throats. And again, it starts with Aaron Jones, starts with the running game. And Christian Watson, to his credit, showed up. They released Amari Rodgers today, the Clemson wide receiver.
5 fumbles to lead the NFL among non-quarterbacks.
And so they're at a point now where I think they are they have to show the consistency. Can they do it again next week? Listen, the division's probably out of it for the Packers, but not making the playoffs when you're paying Aaron Rodgers $50 million would be a massive, massive failure. So they have it's weird. They're an under 500 team, but they have so much pressure right now. Like, the weight of the world, I think, is a lot on the Packers coaching staff to get this thing right and get this team to the playoffs. For the Cowboys, listen, you have to go for it. They have just been very average all year. They squeaked by with some wins, and right now I think they are competitive within their own division, except for Philly. I think Philly is still considerably better than Dallas, and Dallas has a ways to go before I feel good about them having a chance to win playoff games. That's for sure.
Yeah. The Rams at home drop this one by 10 to the Arizona Cardinals, and Colt McCoy and Cooper Kupp is lost for a month.
They're done.
Possibly even longer.
They're done.
So, yeah, the Rams are pretty much done now. They are 3-6, and, yeah, essentially it's over.
The Rams should pack it in for the year. The Rams, there's no need to get any more of your star players hurt. This is a wash of a year. You won the Super Bowl last year. You have to. This was a window that we knew was short for the Rams, and they have to find a way to. They don't have draft picks. That's okay. That there'll be a free agent destination. They have got to find a way to just ease this kind of into a transition into just moving on. If I was a Rams fan, I would be pro them sitting guys, get rest. I do not want Donald hurt. I do not want Stafford getting out there and getting injured. And let's just pack this puppy in and make it one last big push for next year with this core. Because it's a great core, but it's just been disastrous from the beginning. And right now they're out of it. For the Cardinals, Colt McCoy comes in, does what he does. Like once a year, he'll come in and get a win. If he has to start next week, he will lose. So hopefully Kyler can be back. And for the Cardinals, maybe a slight heartbeat. They're still alive, maybe. But the Rams are, I mean, they're dead in the water. It's going to take maybe them signing OBJ and Matt Stafford to have this rest and come back and win 5 in a row. And maybe they then all of a sudden can squeak in a wild card spot and be dangerous. But if I'm a Rams fan, I'm comfortable with them packing it in and gearing up for next year with this core and going for another run.
Get Matt Stafford that elbow surgery that I guarantee he's probably going to end up having in the offseason anyway. 49ers win 22-16 over the Chargers. A huge win for San Fran, really. And, you know, Justin Herbert had an insane throw in this game where he climbed the pocket and then threw it, you know,
he's
on
special.
the other side of the field. He's incredible. The guy makes amazing throws. But the story of this one is, again, San Fran finding a way to get it done. Jimmy G didn't throw a touchdown pass in this game. Kind of the story of how Jimmy G wins a lot, right? He's just he'll just do enough to get you to the win. And Christian McCaffrey punched it in late to kind of get the victory for the 49ers in this one. They'll win any way they can. They are 5-4. Chargers are also 5-4. Both teams, scratching and clawing now in their divisions, but we talked about Seattle. The 49ers are in this thing too, and they're one game out of potentially taking this division. So they're right there, and they're hitting their stride as well. So
the
big
Niners,
win for them.
Yeah, the Niners it just feels like they need a little more time to kind of keep gelling and putting this all together, right? I think they
some
will.
New guys and
sure. And they're all finally healthy. They can be a juggernaut. I do think, though, it is funny because we just talked about like Dolphins, Niners, that comparison. You see it. I mean, Tua right now is just playing more explosively and accurately with the football than Jimmy G is. Jimmy G is managing the game really, really well and helping them, to win. I think the Niners absolutely right now feel to me like the favorites to win the West. I feel like if they're healthy moving forward, they'll catch up with Seattle and be able to overtake them. And for the Chargers, with Herbert, I think this has been a really it's a rough year. I mean, he's missing his 2 best targets. Eckler, I just think, is very limited. He's very good, but he's limited. They're missing Slater. It's been just a really tough year. He's had the broken ribs. He's making the most out of it, but right now this team just doesn't have enough of their pieces for me to feel good about them winning in the playoffs. Like, could they sneak in? Yeah, I think Herbert's talented enough to keep them alive to do that. Defensively, I like their defense a lot, but they just are so when you're watching that game of Sunday Night Football and you're seeing just like all the guys they're missing, it's like no wonder they're struggling right now. And then when they get back, it's can they all stay healthy and can they actually integrate these pieces? They haven't been practicing. They're just a real mess. And so luckily for them, their own division's a disaster besides the Chiefs. And overall in the AFC, it feels like you're just competing with the AFC East right now.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that is the contest, no question. Finally, an NFC East showdown on Monday Night Football, 32-21 win for Washington.
What a win.
To hand the Eagles their first loss of the season. Washington, if you might remember, ended the Steelers streak of when they were 11-0 in 2020. So something about the Commanders and their ability to knock off the undefeated teams. But this game, 32-21, really wasn't the story. It was 26-21, and obviously a final desperation play by the Eagles turned into a fumble touchdown. So really it was 26-21 win for Washington.
Yeah.
A couple weird calls, missed calls in this game. But really kind of on both sides. So I don't think that factored entirely into just like ruining the game for the Eagles overall. Washington did a good job of, kind of fighting back and the Eagles were trailing for a good portion of this game as well. And then they battled back too. So it was a really entertaining game. But in my view, like Washington has to stick with Heineke at this point.
Absolutely.
Like you can't go back to Wentz, even though that's kind of what they're talking about. It just Heineke's getting them wins, and they're 5-5 right now, so they still are on like the outside looking in for a potential, a wild card spot.
Absolutely, you have to stick with Heineke. Ride the hot hand. You know that Heineke's not your quarterback of the future. You know that Wentz isn't the quarterback of the future. So at least ride the hot hand right now. I will say, I think for the Commanders, the arrow is pointing up. Heineke's playing well. They feel like they have some good momentum. Ron Rivera's got the locker room kind of back and working together. They feel like they're not totally dysfunctional. I think there's
Chase
maybe
Young returns next.
Chase, yes, I was just about to say Chase Young. So the words on my mouth coming back. That's huge for them. And for the Eagles, listen, it's a loss. I think in the end, you chalk it up as, hey, this is probably a good thing. Get rid of the pressure. Get rid of the expectations of going undefeated. Know that your team can be beat. You got hit in the mouth. It'll be good for the coaches to show the film. Don't belabor on the penalties too much. The Eagles, also the second time this Washington defense has seen this Eagles offense. So I think that's something. It's a little like, all right, what's that next level for you, Eagles offense? Where's that next kind of level of creativity? And Jalen Hurts at times struggled, I think, from behind a little bit. And this Eagles defense is not the same without now his name's escaping me. Their first round pick, the defensive tackle from Georgia, he missed that game.
Oh, Jordan Davis, yeah.
So again, this is that point of the season where injuries and people in and out of the lineups are causing maybe weird results. I don't want to overreact. I still feel very strong about the Eagles if they're healthy and they're finding ways to tweak their offense and not just be as predictable, because clearly Washington knew what they were in for. They've already seen the Eagles once this year. They felt comfortable handling the explosive plays and the explosive Jalen Hurts, and that was on display. I thought Washington dominated the line of scrimmage. A little concerning, but again, no Jordan Davis. So we'll keep our eyes on it. Washington's arrows pointed up. I still feel really good about Philly. And if I'm a Philly fan, I'm comfortable getting that undefeated stuff out of the way. Pop the champagne, Dolphins. Leave us alone.
There you go. I agree with that, by the way. That has been our Week 10 recap here on the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan. Kind of out of time, but we'll get the Super Bowl plane update, hopefully on social media, so we can check that out.
Yes.
We can really flesh that out next week for sure. But yeah, he's got the card and everything ready to go. So stay tuned for that. That should be good to see some changes there over the past couple weeks since we last brought the Super Bowl plane to you. But this is the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan signing off.